passengers travelling to the interpretation station, please alight now.
Episode 9. The interpretation station is called to order. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're well. We're back. We've got a cracking episode coming up. Yes, by popular demand, now that my subscriber count has reached the level of 31 subscribers, 31, and because so this is actually this episode is actually going to be our first sequel. Oh yes, I just hope it'll be a sequel in the style, let's say, of the Two Towers, the Lord of the Rings sequel, compared to the number one, as opposed to, say, Predator 2 or Police Academy 2. I don't know if you've ever seen Predator 2. You'll remember how good Predator 1 is with Schwarzenegger and all that, and he goes out in the jungle, kills a predator. Well, Predator 2 is fucking awful. It really is. I shouldn't be using that language. So let's hope anyway that this is going to be more like Mad Max 2 or Lord of the Rings 2. Yes, because what we're doing in this episode is we're going to be doing the second half of the Putin address to the general debate this year. He did it by VTC. All those general debate statements this year were done pretty much by remote by VTC. And so I thought, Putin is such a good source for language, just at all registers, really, high level, but also a lot of colloquial stuff, a lot of idioms, because he sort of tries to, I think obviously does it deliberately, doesn't he? He's appealing to all the spectrum of society. So as I say, he's a really good source for learning new stuff. So that is the plan. That's the plan. Now, so we're not gonna have any real background, because what you're gonna do is best thing to do is to watch the first episode, episode 6, was it? Anyway, I'm gonna put a link to that episode just here. Okay, so you can click that, do the first episode. There I give you some of the background. I sort of speculate as to what he might talk about. When you've done that, then come back here and do the second part of his statement. So just before we go in, just a reminder as to the best way of doing this. If you go into the description box here, as usual, you'll find a link to the recording, to Putin's statement, the original. You will find a link to a hard copy of that text. And the best thing to do is basically to listen to Putin or listen to the statement, record yourself, then print off the hard copy, and then watch the channel. Watch the episode and see what new things you can pick up. And actually, this time I'm introducing something slightly new. The way when you find the link to the text. So just to make things a bit more clearer now, the version I'm gonna put there. I'm gonna highlight stuff. I'm gonna highlight the things I'm actually gonna be talking about over the course of this episode. So it's gonna look something a bit like this, right? So as you can see, I've highlighted what I think is the sort of important stuff in this text. This is how I'm going to structure my episode now. So you will see when you print it off, you'll see these bits highlighted. The stuff that I haven't highlighted, in other words, there's not that much discussed. You'll just hear the recording and what I've done with it. These bits that I've highlighted are the bits that I've decided are worth focusing on, whether it be in terms of interesting vocabulary, or if it's to do with specific organizations, entities, conventions, where I've maybe wanted to throw some sort of general knowledge in. So this, from now, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to highlight bits in that text that you can find, and that way, I don't know, it might be, you can maybe help you find the stuff easier when you come to watching the episode. If you don't want, if you want to skip, you think, oh great, I've done this bit perfectly, but I was sort of struggling. I was struggling down here to do this bit here, this word bieskarisna. Let's see what Roland has to say about that, and then you can just sort of fast forward it to there and see what words of wisdom I have to impart to you. So with that, as I say, just a quick introduction this time. Let's get cracking. As I say, it was me that was doing the recording myself. I'm a bit short of material for my clients, so this is just a reminder to you to send me more stuff in. Any language, French, Spanish, Russian, even Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian. Send that stuff in, and I can take you through your work and help you. So anyway, let's get started. Okay, so here we go. Here is the text. Obviously, it's the continuation then of episode 6, where I did the first part of Putin's statement to the general debate. Do you remember what the general debate was in Russian? Do you remember I told you it's not one that's actually that easy to remember. Do you remember? Общеполитическая дискуссия. That's the general debate. In case that ever is, remember, you're hit with that. It's always a good one to remember. Okay, moving on. Let's get things started then. It's truly a most difficult global problem. Therefore, the mission of politics is currently to pave the way for trade through joint projects and honest competition, and not tie the hands of business and business initiatives. Okay. So, a couple of things. Действительно, they really like that word in Russian, don't they? They do. Often you'll find with the Russians when they say действительно, it's always indeed, indeed. You'll see Russians speaking English, the statements are peppered with indeed, indeed, indeed. Well, I just thought I'd change things up a bit, so I said truly. Okay, so this is truly, I say, a very serious problem, I think. So other ideas I had was a burning problem, grave problem. So this is like it's a It's not just little ostre, but it's a So there's obviously added stress on that. So yeah, burning or very serious. And then прокладывать дорогу. Проложить дорогу in the perfective sense is to pave the way. Is certainly in this context, pave the way is the best. Sometimes you can also say to set the stage for. That's another alternative. I think here it's just good to stick with the closest here, to pave the way for trade, joint projects, etc. Not tie the hands of business and business initiatives. On we go. The pandemic has also compounded many ethic, technological, humanitarian themes. Okay, this is an interesting verb. Zaostrila. And I guess literally, zaostrila is to sharpen. So I guess you could say to bring into focus. Would be, the exact idea that he's conveying. Although to bring into focus, it's a bit long. It's a bit verbose. Takes up a bit of time. So I said compounded, which I'm pretty pleased with. Although it technically it's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative connotation. Obviously, here it is. The ethical, technological, humanitarian themes have all been compounded by the pandemic. Another idea I had for this was as maybe spotlighted. Can you say spotlight? Can you use spotlight as a verb? That's what I'm. Is anything I'm wondering. So the pandemic has spotlighted a whole string of technological, humanitarian themes. Maybe you can say cast a spotlight, but I'm just looking at ways to save time. So I think you could probably get away with it.
Digital technologies have allowed us to quickly rebuild the education system, trade, services.
Okay, next interesting bit here. I couldn't get. It wasn't coming to Piradovia cyfrowie technologies. I just said straight digital technologies. I couldn't quite remember in English in that moment just what the best adjective was, but obviously you'll tell me. Won't you? State of the art, cutting edge are all, the two that really spring to mind. I mean, you say just leading digital technologies, although I kind of think when you're saying digital technologies, it almost presupposes that they're going to be pretty fancy technologies anyway. But yeah, remember those two solutions for Piradovia, cutting edge and state of the art. Okay, so they've allowed us to rebuild the education system, trade, services.
For established remote learning, online courses for people.
Ah, yes, down here. Наладить дистанционное обучение. Just the verb here actually is of interest to me. Наладить. Often they talk about наладить отношения, where I'll often say to forge relations. I like forging. Okay, generally. Here it's doesn't quite make as much sense. Okay, he's talking about дистанционное обучение in terms of remote learning. What's the best verb then that goes with that? To fine tune, so I said establish in the original. So upon thinking about it, yeah, I can't find much better than fine tune, remote learning, calibrate, remote learning, perfect, remote learning. One of those options. Okay, let's carry on.
AI has helped doctors to respond and provide accurate diagnosis, establish the best courses of treatment, like.
Okay, so there's an important phrase here, isn't it? This is gonna, the way the world is going, this is gonna be referred to ever more and more frequently, isn't it? Искусственный интеллект. And I was going to go with the artificial, then it hit me. It's obviously AI, isn't it? Now, I guess if I'd been a perfectionist, I'd have said maybe artificial intelligence because it's the first time we're mentioning it. But I think it's one of those things now that everyone knows. When you say AI, everyone knows what it is pretty much. So that's what they call it in Russian. Now, I don't know if they use an acronym in Russia. I don't know if they call it sometimes EE. I've not heard it, but anyway, that's artificial intelligence. Схемы лечения. Подбирать оптимальные схемы лечения. That's obviously to prescribe the best courses of treatment. So I think I said to choose. Podbirate, I said to choose. Obviously, I guess with medication, which is okay. I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm pretty all right with what I said there. I guess the best word would be to prescribe, and yeah, I'm pleased that I got courses of treatment. In that moment, it just suddenly came to me. So that's the best solution.
With any other innovations, digital technologies have often a liability to run out of control, and as.
Now, here's an interesting expression. Oh, this is one of my favorite parts of the episode today. Okay, this phrase. Тенденцию к неуправляемому распространению. Okay, so like any other like any other innovation, digital technologies have a tendency, have a habit of, okay, now I said in the original, I said there to run out of control, which is okay, But I knew there was something better hiding away somewhere in the nooks and crannies of my brain. And I literally had a eureka moment. I was in the shower and the English expression occurred to me, like eureka. Yes, it came to me, and the expression that came to me was to run wild. Okay, remember that, to run wild, because they talk about a lot of things, you know, in the context, I don't know, of weapons or whatever, неуправляемому распространению, just being spread without any control, so they're running wild. All right, I was really pleased with that one. Let's go on.
With any weapons can fall into the hands of various kinds of radicals and extremists, not just in zones of regional conflict.
Okay, one just little thing here. I didn't say обычное оружие. I just said weapons. Okay, I skipped the adjective. Again, he was speaking pretty fast, so I was having to drop a few words here and there. The standard solution for обычное оружие is conventional weaponry. Although I think in this case he's saying, like, as with any kind of weapon. In this specifically, I think he's saying, as with any kind of weapon. But usually, yeah, when they talk about, if you're doing a meeting on disarmament or something like that, and they talk about обычное оружие, it's usually conventional weaponry. So yeah, they can fall into the hands of radicals.
But in other prosperous countries, spawning huge risks in that regard.
Again, a couple of other things. I think I preferred the way I did it this time than to the first episode 6. So I was getting some good words in here. Благополучные страны. So he's saying, you know, that it's not just the poor countries that are affected. These kind of things can affect prosperous countries, countries that are doing well. Again, something you'll hear quite a bit. And then this is one of my favorite verbs from Russian, порождать риски, огромные риски, to spawn huge risks. So that's one that, I mean, I remember learning that one maybe 10 years ago, just when I was starting working at the UN. But I said the Russians use that a lot, and it does sound good, to spawn risks. It's got real feeling. It's not just a bland expression, like creating risks, like spawning. You feel, ugh.
God, in terms of cybercrime, transfer of digital technology also merits serious conversation at the UN. It's important.
Yeah, I missed a couple of little bits here. Okay. I said talk about cybercrime, so kiberbezopasnost, obviously, cyber security is the expression. Применение. I think I was a bit distracted at this point. So I didn't hear применение. Often when they talk about oh, here we go, передовые, you know, again. Цифровые технологии. Again, cutting-edge digital technologies. I said whenever I hear technologies, one of the collocations that always springs to mind is transfer of technologies. Obviously here it's use of применение технологий. Yes, and it merits, serious conversation. На площадке on, well, you can just say at the UN, can't you? At the forum of the UN. Often площадка can be rendered as a forum.
To heed, understand people's misgivings, since in the
couple of words here that I'm quite pleased with. So to услышать here, you know, in English you wouldn't really say it's important to hear, okay, what people have to say. I guess it is, but it's more than that. It's really it's not just hear, but to heed, to pay attention to what they're saying. So often I like to use heed. It's a good word. And опасение, my go-to solution of опасения is misgivings. I do like using misgivings. Okay, you can say fears as well, but it's just too. It's a conscious effort to keep my vocabulary sort of expanded. Okay, there's plenty of opportunities to use fears when they talk about strach of something or other. So for опасения, I like to allocate the word misgivings for doing опасения.
New era, their rights will need to be protected. The right to privacy, property, and security. We must.
This is like this expression here, which again, it's not as simple as it looks if you don't actually sit down with me and think it throw it straight out. Because право на частную жизнь, for ages I was just saying the right to private life, I mean, it's the right to privacy. That is the sort of set expression. So just remember that.
Must learn to use new technologies for the benefit of humanity, find the right balance between.
Yeah, for благо человечества, for the benefit of humanity. Okay, so найти balance. So I said I just did a sort of mirror translation here, sort of like find the right balance. I guess again the nicest sounding expression would be, I guess, to strike a balance.
Incentives for developing AI and justified restrictive measures.
Okay, so stimul, incentives, all right. Again, talking about AI. This оправданный, so my knee-jerk reaction with оправданными is justified, and it is usually the best option. I was kind of thinking here though as well, maybe reasonable restrictive measures, striking the balance between incentives and incentives for developing AI and reasonable restrictive measures. So I don't know, reasonable, justified, legitimate as well, maybe.
Together, reaching consensus on regulation, which.
Okay, so I did a nice little shortcut here, I guess you could say. Совместным усилием, rather than saying through joint efforts, which is fine. So I just said together. I mean, that's what that means, isn't it? It just means together. So it doesn't save you actually, when you count the syllables, it doesn't save you that much time, really. Through joint efforts, 4 syllables together, 3. But somehow it seems to just come out easier together. Reach a consensus. Okay.
Which would avoid the potential for threats. Okay. What's more, not.
So a consensus on regulation, which would, I said here, to avoid potential threats. I'm not. It's okay. I'm not that happy with it. So I was thinking that would avert is perhaps the when you talk about threats and you want to get around that threat, to avert a threat or to prevent a threat. I'd say avert is the best.
Just military, technological security, but also traditions, rights, human morals.
Okay, so I skipped a little bit. Морали человеческого общения. On reflection, I think the best thing. So, okay, общение is usually communication, the morals of human communication. Although I think here perhaps the morals of human interaction is perhaps the best solution.
And during the pandemic, doctors and volunteers, citizens of various countries, have shown us all an example for mutual aid, and that kind of solidarity knows no borders.
One thing of interest here, it's a fairly common device in Russian when they do this, they показывали и показывают will use a past and a sort of present continuous to show an action that still started in the past and is still going on. And okay, I think I just said have shown us, which okay, I think the solution that would best reflect the idea that he's trying to get across is have continued to show. When they do that in Russian, when they use that sort of device of the past and the present continuous, if you put in have continued to show, have continued to prove, have continued to, etc. Такая солидарность не знает границ, solidarity knows no borders. Okay.
Many countries have openly and selflessly helped each other.
Okay, another word I'm quite pleased I got here. Бескорыстно, selflessly. Without any, there's nothing in it for themselves. They've just done it selflessly, self-sacrificingly, maybe. Anyway, selflessly is I think the best though.
There were also cases where there was a deficit in humanism, a lack.
Okay, so I'm trying to get around this deficit, the lack, as you can hear. Проявлялся дефицит гуманизма. So I'm trying to give the speaker a bit of a smorgasbord, a deficit, a lack. What just occurred to me, literally, so I just went to the bath. All my best ideas come to me in the bathroom. To be found wanting occurred to me just as I went. I've never actually, I don't know if I've ever had the opportunity to use that expression, but that's it. In English, when something's missing, often we'll say has been found wanting. So there have been cases where humanism has been found wanting. So, not the eureka moment.
If you like, goodness towards each other at an official state level. We believe that the UN's authority could facilitate strengthening and enhancing the role specifically of the human element of multilateral and bilateral relations.
Okay, so the vocabulary here is fairly straightforward in this little section. Содействовать is always a good one just to remember, for me to keep reminding of. So I tend to say to facilitate. You can say to help. I think I said to help here. Facilitate is always good. And I always sort of, against that, you have способствовать, which I tend to use contribute to. So I go with содействовать, facilitate, способствовать, contribute to. Oh yeah, I think I talk about the human. Okay, человеческая составляющая. I said the human element or the human component. There's another alternative. Укрепление, повышение, two synonyms here. So you want to have something that you can, a few words that you can use here to bolster, to enhance, to strengthen, to heighten, any one of those.
That, social exchanges, youth exchanges, cultural ties, social educational programs, cooperation in the spheres of sport, science, technology, protecting the environment and people's health.
Okay, just a very small technical tip here. As you say, I mean, the more experienced among you, I'm sure, already familiar with it, but if you're not as experienced, is, you can, if you miss the word, so I said общественные, молодежные обмены, and for whatever reason, I didn't get social initially. I said youth, and then I was able to throw in and social exchanges. Okay, so you're entirely within your rights to do that. You can throw in a word that you've missed a bit later on. You just sort of give it a bit of context. So that's just a small thing. And then again, the rest of this is all fairly straightforward. Охрана окружающей среды, like I said, environmental protection.
as to healthcare. Here, as in the economy, we need to remove obstacles to partnership as far as possible. Our country
Yep, snimat prigradi, I said remove obstacles, yeah, lift barriers, remove barriers, eliminate barriers, any one of those sort of collocations.
continues to take an active role in global and regional efforts to combat COVID.
Here's another example of what I was just talking about, показывала и показывает, принимала и принимает. Okay, continues to participate in or continues to take part in. What did I say there? I've forgotten now. Let me see what I said. Okay, there you go. There I have it. A textbook book example of what you should do in this scenario. So it continues to take an active role, play an active part. Okay, again, just a small thing here. По борьбе с COVID-19, so to combat. You could say in the fight against COVID-19, in the struggle against, in the struggle with. But often when I hear boroться with something or other like this, it's like to combat is the most efficient way of doing it.
Providing assistance to the countries most in need, both bilaterally and through multilateral formats.
Yeah, помощь наиболее пострадавшим государствам. Yeah, those the most affected countries, the hardest hit countries, perhaps. Countries who've borne the brunt. I think I like hardest hit, perhaps, of those.
We do that above all in view of the central coordinating role of the UN and the WHO within it.
Okay, this is a tricky little bit that almost threw me. I sort of saved myself at the end. You have this gerundive, okay? Координирующие роли, входящие в структуру ООН, Всемирной организации здравоохранения. So he's talking, he's saying, the coordinating role of, I think so. I initially was going to go with the UN, because often the Russians love talking about usually when they talk about coordinating role, it always refers back to the UN itself. But this first word here, the входящий, sort of gives it away that it's not actually going to be specifically the UN, but rather something, within it. And so then it turns out it's actually the World Health Organization. And then I sort of save it by saying within it at the end. But this is one of those classic little tricky Russian gerundives. And I'm not certain the best way of... there's no real good way of doing this, other than saying the coordinating role. You could say the coordinating role of the UN and its World Health Organization, so conveying the idea that the WHO sort of belongs to it. It's a tricky little one, though.
Believe that the capacities of WHO must fundamentally be enhanced.
Okay, ВОЗ. Okay, that's the acronym in Russian for World Health Organization, WHO. Потенциал, also, I tend to, in Russian, go with capacities, all right? Наращивание потенциала is the sort of standard Russian solution for capacity building. So 9 times out of 10, потенциал will be capacities. And then it's качественно укреплять. So, again, Russians like this word качественно. Often if you look at a Russian translations of this word, you'll often find qualitatively, but that's a really ugly word. We don't really say that in English, do we? So I always tend to say fundamentally. When I hear качественно, I always tend to say fundamentally.
work is beginning, and Russia will take a very active role in this.
A couple of small points then coming up here. Примет, future. Don't keep your eye out for those futures. They're not doing it right now. They will be doing it. Okay, they will be taking a. So заинтересованное участие, an active part. Okay. Proactive, you could even say, I guess.
The scientific experience gained, the clinical experience of Russian doctors have allowed.
Okay, this is a tricky little bit here, some of it. Накопленный опыт. So this is this накопленный is the adjective for that noun. So they use it a lot. Накопленный опыт, experienced, gained. So I throw it in at the end because, okay, scientific, productive capacities, clinical experience. Again, so nakoplen, they often use it, as I say, gained, amassed, accumulated. They'll often talk about, on a different subject, when they talk about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Okay, so they're the sort of the Russian, Chinese counterparts of NATO. All right, and the Russians will often refer to them as talking быстро накапливающий опыт организация как ШОС. Okay, so it's these organizations that are quickly gaining experience. So that's somewhere you'll hear that word used quite a bit. So anyway, here you can just sort of tag it on after you hear opit, experience gained. Okay, then it goes on, позволи оперативно, so swiftly or promptly. Yeah, this bit I struggled a little bit. Разработать линейку тест-системы медицинских препаратов. I think did I miss out the test system? So it basically means to develop a range of test systems. And okay, медицинских препаратов. I said medical tools. It's more like, medical treatments. Medication. Actually, медицинских препаратов is just really medication.
Allowed us to swiftly establish testing and medical tools for identifying and treating COVID, and then registering the first.
Okay, so identifying and treating. So I recover a bit here. Выявление, лечение coronavirus. So you note how I will just interchangeably I'll swap coronavirus for COVID. And it's not a small thing because coronavirus, it's 5 syllables. COVID is just 2. So that's a good little opportunity to save a little bit of time.
First vaccine in the world, Sputnik V.
I was a bit lucky there. So it was Sputnik V, the vaccine, the first Russian vaccine. So I heard him say Sputnik there, so I sort of had a bit of a stab at that. So I think it actually was Sputnik V.
Now, we're very open and ready for partnership in that regard.
Again, just a fairly simple word on the face of it. It's always a good one just to remember what to use for it. I think did I say determined for partnership? Focused, committed to partnership, focused on partnership, committed to partnership.
Where we have proposed an initiative to very soon.
Выступать с инициативой. Okay. made a proposal, I think, that we've proposed an initiative. Okay, it's better maybe to present if we've presented an initiative, we put forward an initiative.
Hold an online conference, a summit.
Okay, whenever they talk about конференция высокого уровня, you can say a high-level conference, but again, it's much easier to just say summit. It's much quicker.
With participation of states interested in cooperation to create a COVID vaccine, where we would share our experience and continue interaction with all states and international agencies, include.
Okay, делиться опытом. Yeah, that's a very common Russian expression here. To share experience. Взаимодействовать, interact, cooperate or interact, one of the two. Международные структуры. Yes, this word structures. What to use, entities or agencies.
Supplies to other countries of the Russian vaccine, which has proven its worth, its safety, and its effectiveness.
Okay, this is again, maybe sometimes you can fall into the trap here. You sort of, as you know, I've been doing this for quite a few years, so I sort of like to think that I can predict what the Russians are often going to say. And доказавшая свою, it's usually just like эффективность. Okay, so I was just going to just say immediately to prove its worth, but then obviously he went on and added a couple of other things that had proven its, its reliability, its security. But they often, that's a phrase they use a lot. Доказавший свою эффективность.
Russia is convinced today that we need to draw on all the capacities of the global pharma industry.
It skips a little bit here. So использовать все мощности. So this expression to draw on is something is one I really like to it's a solution I really like to draw on. Okay, it's much more interesting than to use. Okay, exploit. To draw on capacities, you can draw on so many things. Draw on their experience, draw on their capacities, draw on their knowledge. There's many things you can draw on, and it sounds very nice. It sounds very sort of professional. It's a very good sound. It's a very good solution.
Near future, ensure free access to vaccinations for citizens of all states.
Yeah, this bit just jumped the recording here. В обозримой, so starting here, в обозримой перспективе. So in the foreseeable future, in the near future, maybe foreseeable future is the nicest. In the not too distant future. So where have we got to here?
This dangerous virus can strike anyone. COVID.
Okay, I quite like how I did that. It's not as easy as it looks. This little sentence. Again, you gotta flip it, haven't you? So I've turned "opasным virus," I've put that into the subject, and I've turned каждый into the accusative. So yeah, this dangerous virus can strike anyone, can hit anyone.
COVID doesn't care about, has struck personnel and staff of UN, its headquarters, its regional offices.
Okay, so yeah, this bit threw me a little bit, as you can probably tell. What he's actually saying, coronavirus не обошел стороны, so it's not sidestepped UN personnel. So at this point, actually, it's interesting that he actually, he focuses on personnel at the UN. I think I was expecting, coronavirus nie abashol, and I was thinking perhaps, okay, he's going to talk how it hasn't spared the richer countries. Everyone's sort of been affected by it, but no, he actually goes and talks about the UN personnel. Anyway, all I wanted to say was here, nie abashol storany, so hasn't sidestepped or hasn't spared UN personnel either. Going on.
Russia is ready to give to the UN all qualified assistance required. We propose free provision of our vaccine for voluntary vaccines for UN staff and its offices.
Okay, just a couple of very small vocabulary plot points here. Predlagaем, I think propose, this is offer, obviously, offering free vaccines. Сотрудников, staff. Подразделение, when you're talking about the UN, and when they talk about подразделение, the safest thing to go for is offices.
Now, we've received requests from UN colleagues for this, and we're not going to turn them down.
Okay, so I was just this. I'm quite pleased how I did this little bit at the end here. Okay, такие обращения к нам поступают. Okay, so they've received these requests, and this is again one of those sort of Russian double negatives. I mean, again, it's a bit the Russians do like the double negatives. For example, one of the when they want to say судьба этих людей нам не безразлична. As in, we're not indifferent to the fate of these people. Now, in English, we'd more likely say something along those lines. We'd say something about, we care about those people. But in Russian, they say, we are not indifferent to them. And so again, here we have another sort of along similar lines. Не останемся к ним безучастным. So we're not going to not respond to them, basically. So as I said, sometimes you have to turn these double negatives. It's just easier to just turn them into a positive. And, okay, I said we're not going to turn them down and we will respond to them. Sometimes you can really trip up trying to stay too literal. So sometimes you just got to take the decision, okay, not remain unresponsive. That just means we are going to respond to them.
Also crucial today on today's agenda, at the heart of joint efforts must remain protecting the environment, and the problem of climate change.
Okay, just one word here. Принципиально. So, okay, I said crucial. I said, yeah, so что еще принципиально важно? So I said crucial. Actually, I turned those two words into one. Again, principialno, I also tend to just go with fundamentally, generally speaking. Okay, so we're going to go down here now. This sentence.
Its relevance is reflected by the existing multilateral treaties, agreements, and within the UN. We call on.
Okay, this is another sort of Russian flip that I've done here. Свою актуальность. So here it's an accusative, right? So I've turned it into the nominative. I've just gone straight in with its relevance. And then doказали is active, and so I've turned it into a passive. So it's just it's just so that I can stay with the flow. You have to do that in Russian. So its relevance has been proven, or what did I say? Has been I think proven or reflected, confirmed. Договор, by the way, display safe treaties. Whenever you see dogovor is a treaty. If you see dogovorенность, arrangement. That's how I separate it in my head. So it's just automatic. Dogovor, treaty. Соглашение, agreement. That's how the sort of treaty, agreement, arrangement. Okay, so keeps it simple that way.
All countries to responsibly approach their compliance, particularly when it comes to achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, these ответственно подходить к, so I said responsibly approach, to be responsible in how they approach, to take serious, maybe to take seriously. Yeah. Now I think about it, we call all states to take seriously compliance to them, to the treaties, especially on achieving the Paris Treaty. Just so instead of to approach responsibly, again, it's a bit of a mouthful. To take seriously, I think, is a bit quicker, snappier.
Colleagues, once more I want to stress that Russia will do its utmost to facilitate peaceful politico-diplomatic settlement of regional crises and conflicts, guaranteeing strategic stability.
This bit's quite straightforward. Приложит все усилия, do its utmost. Содействовать, okay, we like that word, don't we? Facilitate, peaceful, political, diplomatic. Урегулирование, settlement, I always go with settlement. So these words, I tend to just, have a specific go-to word for them. Обеспечение, guaranteeing, ensuring.
Despite all the conflicts and differences, at times misunderstandings and mistrust among colleagues, we will continue to propose constructive.
Okay, just a couple of, I said here conflict for sport. A sport is more a dispute. The other stuff I did well. Okay, настойчиво предлагать. They do like as I say, the adverbs in Russian. So I mean, if you had to do that word for word, it would be, we will be stubbornly proposing, doggedly proposing, but in English that doesn't sound quite right. So this is one of those occasions where you might want to go with keep. We're going to keep proposing. We're going to, sometimes it's the opposite, настойчиво откажутся or something. So here they stubbornly refuse to do something. So in English, what's more natural and what's actually a bit quicker is to keep rejecting. So here it's when I keep proposing constructive, unifying initiatives.
Unifying initiatives above all in the sphere of arms control, strengthening the existing treaty regimes.
Okay, this is an important issue. Контроль над вооружениями, arms control, and then, when they talk about договорные, using it as an adjective, again, it's just going to be treaty, here it's the treaty regimes. When they talk about the treaty bodies, all the committees on the elimination of racism, on against torture, they're the договорные orgаны. So just don't let that throw you when you see it as an adjective. It's just treaty.
With respect to the bans on chemical, biological, and toxin weapons.
Okay, so a bit of general knowledge is going to just come in handy at this moment. Putin refers to a few big conventions and agreements that have been signed in the past or that are coming up for renewal. The first one he talks about, so in this section, he talks about запрет биологического и токсинного оружия. So I think I said toxicological weapons. I knew I was very close. So this is the convention here. You see, it's called the Biological Weapons Convention, and its full name is the Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, and Stockpiling of Bacteriological and Toxin Weapons and on their destruction, usually referred to as the Biological Weapons Convention, or the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention, the BTWC. That is they have this other abbreviation BWC, but in theory, the best abbreviation for it is the BTWC. And I'm going to put up what the Russian for that is just here. Now, the second, then he also talks about chemical weapons. So you have another convention, the Chemical Weapons Convention. There's the full name of it, the Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, Stockpiling, and Use of Chemical Weapons and on their destruction. So that's generally referred to just as in the acronym as CWC. Again, I'm going to put up the Russian equivalent for you here so that you know it. Now, this is a very important one, actually. Has been very important more recently because it's intimately linked to what was going on in Syria. So do you remember a few years back, the big agreement was reached that Assad, the Syrian president, was going to eliminate his chemical weapons arsenal. And this was done through the OPCW, so they're mentioned here, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. It tells you that the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons is an intergovernmental organization implementing body for the Chemical Weapons Convention, which entered into force 29th April 1997. So it's basically been ratified by all the UN member states. And in Russian, it's Organizatsiya по запрету химических OSHO. Anyway, the acronym is OSHO. I'm going to again put that the full name in Russian so that you know that's a very important one, particularly in the context of Syria. So returning now to the text. By the way, the general knowledge lesson hasn't quite finished. There'll be more.
Now, another key issue that needs to be tackled swiftly is that of extending the Russia-US Treaty on Strategic Offensive Weapons, which expires in February 2021, very soon.
Okay, so yes, this is now a reference to the famous START Treaty, START 2 or the New START. So it was signed in 2011 by Presidents Obama and Medvedev. There you have the Russian, so the Russians call it договор по сокращению стратегических наступательных вооружений. So they tend to refer to it as ДСНВ, договор по сокращению наступательных вооружений. ДСНВ. So it's a good, because I think in English we use the acronym a lot more, the START, whereas in Russian they sometimes give it the full name, and it's important to know, that DSNV is the сокращение наступательных вооружений. Obviously, it's much quicker. If you can just recognize that as being start, you just have to say start instead of having to give it the full name in English, going the Treaty on the Reduction of Strategic Offensive Arms. So it's an important one to be able to recognize.
We're conducting talks with the US. What's more, we look forward to mutual restraint in developing new missile systems.
Okay, again, I use just a little trick here. We're conducting talks с американскими партнерами. You know, you can just say with the Americans, or the US, rather than part with the partners. And then here, рассчитываем на. I tend to, with рассчитывать на, go with to look forward to. And this word is very important in the context of disarmament, nuclear weapons, restraint. Okay, сдержанность. And indeed, this word is also развертывание, deployment. Okay, it's very, very specific words. There's not really much room for maneuver with these words. In the context of nuclear weapons, you want to know, they want the exact sort of words that are used in the treaty. And by the way, another thing I forgot to mention, going back, первоочередный вопрос. Again, this is a chance just to say priority. You know, I love that word priority because in Russian there's so many sort of euphemisms, ways of talking about what the priority is. This is another example. Первоочередный вопрос. Don't get bogged down into saying an absolutely headline issue or something like that. Just say the priority that we have to and can and must settle swiftly. Priority, very useful word, very makeshift, very adaptable word. This next bit is pretty straightforward, I think.
Add that since last year, I want to stress this, since last year, Russia has already announced a moratorium on deploying on short-range missiles on land and in other countries in Russia, elsewhere.
Actually, no, I'm wrong. This was quite a tricky bit. You need to know your missile vocabulary here a little bit. Especially here. So again, размещение наземных ракет. Okay, so this is again like deployment. Now, ракет средней и меньшей дальности. Okay, so you've got short range, intermediate range, and long range. Okay, so there's no mention here of long range, but yeah, intermediate range and short range. Just remember that. Well, remember the package of the three, because otherwise you're going to start fumbling around. You know, you'll hear it and you'll know exactly what they're talking about, but then you'll be sort of fumbling around, as I was, trying to find the best way of saying средней дальности. What did I say? Middle range or something like that. So just again, if you've got a feeling, if you sense a discussion about missiles is coming, just sort of repeat it to yourself before. Okay, short range, mid range, long range.
And as long as the US refrain from such actions, but
okay, yeah, and it's tricky. So they've basically announced a moratorium on the deployment of these missiles. Okay, for raket, by the way, missile sounds better than rockets. They say they're going to have a moratorium as long as basically the US, it also sort of commits to refraining from doing the same thing. Or they want to, they're prepared to, introduce this moratorium. So воздерживаться is to refrain from, to abstain from.
We have yet to hear a response to our proposal either from the US or from their allies. We believe.
Okay, again, I've just dropped Partnyorov because, I mean, it speaks for itself. You know, the Americans or from their allies. Again, I was just giving myself a little moment's breather.
That such compromises would create a good basis for launching serious, in-depth discussions.
Okay, you could feel my pain, couldn't you? You could feel my pain trying to get the word for vstriechnie shaggy, and then so I had to just bail out in the end. Compromise. Okay, so that's how you get around these things. I mean, the word I was looking for that was on the tip of my tongue was reciprocal. You do this for me, and I'll do it for you. That was the word, reciprocal steps. And so I couldn't quite find it, couldn't quite get it.
All factors impacting on strategic stability, and would truly be a step towards a comprehensive agreement forming a.
Yes, I think I sort of so fried my brain trying to think of that reciprocal, and then I sort of fell behind a little bit, and so I had to sort of make things up a little bit. I said, rather than его цель, rather than saying its goal, I said that it would be a step towards, okay, what I really would, what you're wanting here is, I think, a comprehensive agreement. So I told you a moment ago, dogovorion, should be arrangement. So the best thing here would be its goal would be reaching a comprehensive arrangement. But because I'd fallen a little bit behind, I had to sort of paraphrase a bit.
Solid basis for international security architecture, which reflects previous experience in that sphere.
Okay, I'm catching up now. Formirovanie, forming a solid basis. Okay, they like to talk about the international security architecture. That is the sort of set phrase there, so don't let that trouble you overly. Учитывающий предыдущий опыт, so yeah, reflecting prior experience.
Fully respond to not just modern but future military, political, and technological realities.
Okay, so I did this bit pretty well. I'm going to give myself 9 out of 10. Yeah, this отвечай, fully, what did I say? Responding to modern future realities. I think the best, well, upon thinking about it, I think the best thing would be best adapted to. Now, with the thing with respond, it's quite a neutral one that it's a sort of safety. You can play safe with responding, okay? Because sometimes you talk about отвечать стремлениями. So, as in, that would meet the expectations. Sometimes, often you can use it's meet. Will it meet their expectations? Meet challenges. But here, if you start going with meet, that it would fully meet technological realities, doesn't sound right. Whereas with respond, it's as I say, it's a more conservative solution, but one that's sort of more malleable. You can fit it in, and it sounds okay. It sounds fine. People know what you mean.
Especially Russia proposed an initiative to conclude a legally binding agreement with the.
Okay, this is an important little notion here. Юридически обязывающее соглашение, so a legally binding agreement. You need to know that word, especially the first two words, legally binding.
Participation of all leading space exploring states that would
Yeah, so ведущих космических держав. So I added, you see here, I added space exploring states, the leading outer space states. Maybe with the space, you maybe need to add something just to give it a bit more context. That's why I put in exploration.
provide for a ban on deployment of weapons in outer space.
Okay, запрет на размещение оружия в космосе. Okay. There is actually some important context here. There is a Russian-Chinese initiative on prohibiting the deployment of weapons in outer space. Actually, I tell a slight lie. So actually, that initiative is called No First Placement of Weapons in Space, in outer space. So yeah, that's a Russian and Chinese initiative. They in the form of a resolution. So that wording it's sort of important to know. No first placement, and this all fits into the whole theme of what's called PAROS, preventing an arms race in outer space. And so this all fits into a broader theme, as you can see here, called prevention of an arms race in outer space, which is often shortened to PAROS. So there are meetings, I have done meetings of this ad hoc PAROS committee, part of the Conference on Disarmament. So it's an important idea to be aware of. Goes back to 1981, prevention of an arms race in outer space, PAROS. And I'll put the Russian equivalent here.
On use of force or threat of the use of force against space objects.
Okay, so космические объекты are just space objects. You don't have to do anything fancy with that. Maybe outer space objects. So basically, they want to apply the rules of, international law to weapons that exist already, land-based weapons on Earth, to anything taking place in outer space. Also, that's the idea.
We understand fine well that security issues and all other problems that are being discussed at this anniversary UN session require consolidated efforts on the basis of those values which unify us.
Okay. Just one small thing. Хорошо понимаем. I mean, yeah, I understand fine well. I sort of did this sort of literal translation. I could have just said we realize, and then go on. So, there's always something when you often have these Russian adverb collocations. Настойчиво призываем. There's a great example. Настойчиво призываем. This is in all the UN resolutions. Настойчиво призываем. Just that is to urge. What did we have before? Настойчиво предлагали. So we kept on proposing. This хорошо понимаем. We realize. Very often you'll find that in English there's a quicker way of doing it.
Our shared memory of the lessons of history, spirit of being allies when the members of the...
Yeah, here. The spirit of союзничество. I think this maybe came up in the original Putin episode 6. of being allies. So yeah, I was looking for the one word in. It did come up in episode 6. Now I remember looking for that one word that would reflect that idea: alliance, comradeship. Yeah.
Anti-Hitler coalition in the name of victory and peace throughout the world. We're able to overcome the differences.
Okay. I quite like. Okay, they were smugly stać wyższe разногласия, overcome the differences, rise above their differences.
In current times, in these difficult times,
I don't know if I. So maybe did I skip ideologicznych предпочтения? They were able to rise above their ideologies, their ideological preferences.
all countries need to show political will, wisdom, and be far-sighted.
Yeah, okay, this is the interesting word, dальновидность, be far-sighted. I couldn't remember the noun for, I was saying far-sightedness, but of course it's foresight, or you could say perspicacity. I guess you could just say need to show vision as well, maybe. It's a word that comes up, so just take note. The next bit is fairly straightforward, I think, so just listen to what I've done with it.
And a leading role must here be played by the Security Council permanent members, the states who 75 years ago assumed great responsibility for international peace and security, for maintaining the foundations of international law.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's pretty straightforward. Just making sure you have those words, that immediate go-to words. Like obviously, the постоянные члены совета, permanent members, несут особую ответственность, assumed special responsibility, shouldered the burden. There's a few variations. Сохранение in this, so maintaining the foundations.
Recognizing that responsibility, Russia proposed convening a summit of the G5 with the goal.
Okay, so I make a slight mistake here. By the way, so I summoned. So was the summit. That's again one of these little words that you need. You want either summon or convene. Okay. Большой пятерки. I started getting mixed up now with the G5. I don't know where I got the G5 from actually. You got the G20 and the G7 or the G8. Anyway, so the Большая пятерка is just the 5 permanent members, the 5 nuclear states.
To re-establish the key principles for implementation of international treaties, developing solutions to the most pressing problems of our times. It's
Принципы поведения is more like the principles of conduct in international affairs. And okay, see this word here. They love puti. The Russians using this puti. Often you can actually just leave it out. I mean, you could say, okay, develop paths for effective solutions to the pressing problems. But again, you could just say to develop effective solutions. Often that puti, as I say, is redundant.
Gratifying that our partners have supported that initiative.
Okay, just one interesting word here, отрадно. So I always go with gratifying, all right? It's pleasing, gratifying sounds good.
We look forward to holding such a summit as soon as possible, as soon as the epidemiological situation allows.
Okay. Again, you'll see how I do like to go for the look forward to with Расчетивать. It is the safest, best option, okay? We look forward to holding to such a meeting. Очную встречу basically means a meeting in person. As opposed to, I guess, remotely. In fact, again, Vierhach, that tells you it's like a summit.
I reiterate, interlinked in an interdependent world. We need to work together to deal with global events.
Yeah, okay, so a couple of things. I hope, sorry, my breathing doesn't distract you. You can hear me breathing on the original. That's what that muffled sound is. Взаимосвязанным, взаимозависимым, so yeah, interrelated, interdependent. These are words, sort of buzzwords these days. So this word threw me here. I've got to say водоворотье. So it's a whirlpool, an eddy, a current, I guess a whirlpool, in the whirlpool of international events.
And in line with the principles of international law set out in the UN Charter.
Okay, okay, opierаться при этом, so I guess rely on. Okay, now here we have one of our favorite gerundatives, don't we? Зафиксирование в уставе ООН принципы международного права. So I've with зафиксирование, I've left it out. I've tagged it on at the end, haven't I? In line with the UN Charter's principles. Set out in international law. You know, when you've got something that's зафиксирование, and even на принятом, or something that's already been adopted and agreed to, you can actually leave it out. You know, oftentimes, you know, you could say relying on the UN Charter's principles of international law. Because if they're principles in international law, it means that it goes without saying, already presupposes that they've been whatever, that they've been adopted or that they're set forth. The one where you have to be careful is that of a предложенном. For example, if this was опираться на предложенном в уставе он принципе, because then you have to make clear that those principles haven't actually been agreed to, that they are proposed. So then you might, if let's just say this was на предложение в уставе, you might have to say something like that rely on the proposals in the UN Charter of the principles of international law. You have to get that notion in that they've been proposed. Okay, if they're already been if they're already down on paper, if they're already enacted as laws, I mean, then it speaks for itself. You don't have to say that they're already set forth or enshrined. It's when they're proposed that you really have to make sure you say the proposed. And then to finish,
that's the only way we can properly implement the lofty mission of our organization and ensure a healthy future for this and future generations.
Выполнят, so I said implement here, высокую миссию, fulfill, deliver on. Just keep these words turning over, okay? And then
I wish all peoples of the planet peace and prosperity. Thank you. Okay,
and again, this word is, I think we had this near the start of today's episode as well, благополучие, prosperity, okay? That's a useful word to know. I wish you all peace and prosperity. Okay, so that's the end of Putin's statement to the General Assembly. So it's a good text, some really good words there, and so I'm going to look now and see what my 3 highlights are. Okay, so my 3 highlights from the text, and the first one I'm actually going to give you, it's not even in the text actually. I was going to mention it before and I completely forgot, but I think it's an important thing to know. So he was talking a lot about coronavirus, obviously, and it reminds. And then a few days ago there was a meeting, and they were talking about these tests, these PCR tests with respect to COVID, coronavirus. And the Russian equivalent for PCR is ПЦР, полимеразная цепная реакция test. Okay, so that's the big important test for COVID. Remember that. Number 2, my second highlight is these conventions and agreement, these important treaties, okay? As I was showing you, so the Biological Weapons Convention, the BTWC, so the Biological Toxin Weapons Convention, and maybe even more importantly is the CWC, the Chemical Weapons Convention, as I say, specifically when it comes to Syria. And okay, we mentioned START. START is perhaps a bit better known, but it's good to be reminded of it. But yeah, make sure those conventions that you'll know at least next time you'll recognize them. Okay, make a point of note them down or whatever. And the winner, today's winner, as you might have guessed from earlier on, as I described my eureka moment, was, there we go, к неуправляемому распространению, to run wild. So all sorts of things can run wild. Weapons, digital technologies, obviously, all kinds of things. So that is I'm really pleased. Really pleased with myself for getting that one. That was my big moment today. Okay, so with that, I think that brings us to an end. So just to remind you, if you haven't watched the first episode on Putin, that's episode 6. Go and watch it now. Do that first, because that's where you'll find. I'm going to put it in the description box again, but I'm going to put the link to the recording, the link to the hard copy, and you can then do it yourself. So do episode 1 first. There's a bit of I give you a bit of background in episode 1, and then do the big sequel here. Anyway, press the thumbs up button. Give me a thumbs up if you like the episode. Any comments are always welcome. And also, if you have any work you want me to do, if you have a recording you want me to do, please do send it in to me. I'm going to put my email address up so that if you would like me to do an episode on one of your recordings, that I can keep you anonymous. I don't have to give any names. But if you want, you get a free lesson out of it, basically. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. Smash the subscribe button. Tell your friends all about it. Get them to smash their subscribe buttons. And so that's pretty much it for today. So, as always, it's been a pleasure. And, well, with that, I declare episode 9 of the Interpretation Station adjourned. See you next time.
The train is now leaving the interpretation station. We hope you enjoyed your visit. Until next time, folks.